Hi, this is Craig Smith, chairman of Swiss America. Dr. Gina is the gold standard of talk radio.
What you waiting for?
You are listening to the Dr. Gina Show, coming to you live from the beach. Happy to be with you. You know, I say it all the time that it just seems to me like the news is coming at us so fast that we have to be completely on top of it. We have to have our talking points ready to go. Meaning you, the audience, you have to have your talking points ready to go. You have to be ready to post and tweet and talk about all the things that are happening because they are coming at us so quickly. And life as we know it could change radically on a dime with some of the decisions coming at us. And one of the people who reports on this constantly is Ken Klukowski, whose name is the hardest name to say for radio personalities, but he is one of the best guests you can have on your show because this guy knows his stuff. Welcome back to the Dr. Gina Show, Ken Klukowski.
Jane, it's always great to be with you. Thanks.
I appreciate having you. I know you're a busy man. I can't even understand how you write so prolifically, but you do, and I appreciate it. First thing I want to ask you about this Liberty University case. I got to go do the Awakening with Matt Staver this year. I know that this is his big story of his life right now, and tell us about what is happening with that and any predictions you have.
Well, absolutely. Liberty University, part of its challenge in Obamacare survived because it was raising issues in addition to the ones disposed of by the Supreme Court in its disastrous decision last year, NFIB v. Sebelius. And so as it's gone back down to the lower court, the Supreme Court revived that challenge, sent it back down to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, telling the appeals court that they now had to issue opinions on, to pass judgment upon each of the remaining issues in Matt Staver's case on behalf of Liberty University. And they're basically raising, first of all, they're raising religious objections, the rejections of religious Americans to the individual mandate, the infamous individual mandate that kicks in on January 1st of next year for all of your listeners. Second, also the employer mandate, which has never gone up to the Supreme Court. That is the twin provision of Obamacare. It's every bit as big and onerous as the individual mandate. This is the one that says that every employer with 50 or more employees must provide forms of health care that are approved of by the federal government, or that employer will be subject to a penalty of $2,000 per employee per year, so a minimum of $100,000 a year. And for an employer the size of Liberty University, it would mean millions of dollars a year in fines and penalties. So all of these and related issues like the HHS abortion mandate, which is a regulation rather than part of the Obamacare statute, but the individual mandate for religious Americans, the employer mandate, and then also religious conscience objections to things like the HHS mandate, all of that is before the Fourth Circuit, and Matt Staver argued that case a couple weeks ago. So
do we have any idea when we'll know something on that?
The Fourth Circuit traditionally is one of the fastest working federal appeals courts. I think they generally hold to a time frame of trying to hand down decisions in a case like this in roughly, it's hard to say, but I would guess roughly a 90-day time frame. So I would expect a decision sometime around the end of summer.
Okay, all right. And then I wanted to talk to you, too, about this federal court's denial of driver's license for illegals is in trouble, the Arizona denial of driver's license for illegals. So if they basically, you're saying they're giving off signals that that Arizona will no longer be able to make decisions like that on their own about illegals. They'll be forced to give driver's licenses to illegal immigrants.
Well, yeah, much more narrowly. The judge appears to be, I've never been before this judge, but he actually appears to be a very good judge. And he rejected what was the lead argument that a lot of liberal judges would have liked, that just federal law is the only law when it comes to any matter passing upon a citizen non-citizen distinction in the law. And he set that aside for all the right reasons. But the plaintiffs in this case were clever enough to also raise an argument that there is an equal protection clause violation here. That's whenever similarly situated people are being treated differently. And the problem we're having here is that there is one type of illegal alien that Arizona does continue to give driver's licenses to. And they're just people who have not yet been granted permanent legal status but are temporarily here for political or other type of asylum type reasons where they are not off, they are in the U.S. temporarily, their deportation is being temporarily stayed. They did not enter the country legally, nor have they been given permanent status to remain here. And the court just noted you have two types of illegal aliens being temporarily given a relief regarding deportation. One group you're continuing to allow to get driver's licenses, and the other one you're not. And he says you have to give me some rational basis why you're drawing that distinction. And it looks like Arizona, by his lights, did not, the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, was going through a process of developing a policy paper, but Governor Brewer, according to the court, shortcutted that process just by issuing the order. So I'm not sure that the judge wasn't even kind of criticizing the governor there to say, if you'd let your department carry this process through, maybe they would have given me a legitimate reason for this distinction, but you just issuing the order without giving a rationale, it looks like it might be just political opposition, and that's not sufficient for me to uphold your actions.
In the past few weeks, Ken, it has become completely evident to those of us who feel a little defensive of our faith that we weren't being paranoid. They really were out to get us. It seems there is a hostility toward specifically the Christian religion, but we'll just say religion in the military at all. And you say that Congress is now investigating that. Based on what? I mean, this is hard to defend because you get into issues of Christianity and Islam and those sorts of things. So go ahead and talk to us about that.
Well, that's right. I had a whole series of columns for Breitbart News over a couple-week period. I think there have been 6 out thus far. The Pentagon started meeting with an anti-Christian extremist named Mikey Weinstein.
Right, we reported on that too.
Absolutely. That proselytizing in the military he compared to rape, and he said it was an act of treason against the country, etc. But Pentagon top brass was sitting down with this guy. We broke the story on Breitbart News, and after it got enough public attention, now you have many lawmakers, almost 100 lawmakers total, have sent 2 letters to Secretary Hagel, making it clear that they stand for Americans Americans who have observant faiths that they're devout regarding, and basically demanding that Hagel explain, first of all, why were you meeting with this guy? Why were your subordinates meeting with this guy? Were you aware of his statements and his sentiments? Who authorized these meetings? Who was there? What did you talk about? And then going more broadly, look at these provisions of federal law here regarding conscience protections for religious service members and explain to us why the new policies you're considering, barring religious speech, mainly Christian speech, how that doesn't violate these federal laws. So I haven't heard any responses yet, but Congress is now engaged, and so I expect answers will be forthcoming whether or not the Obama administration wants to provide them.
Well, my whole thing is this Mikey Weinstein, if I'm saying his name right, he called Christians monsters, claiming sharing the gospel of Jesus as an act of treason, equating it with rape, and there's so much more. I mean, those are just some of the hot button parts of it. What I just don't understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if this were a Christian that they had spoken with who had said these things about Islam, I believe it would have been on every major news network, and I believe it would have caused,
and people would have been screaming bloody murder.
Yes, and that's what I don't understand. I don't understand why, as Christians, it seems like we are the most highly persecuted of any other group by every bureaucratic organization with this administration.
Well, that's right. Even though tens of millions of Americans in the heartland of the country would not feel the same way, you have these media and governmental types. You have these urban coastal elites who many of whom just reject the concept that any of us are servants who are answerable to a creator, that our rights come from our creator, not from government, that an ultimate standard of law and justice radiates from an all-wise, all-good creator rather than whatever our ruling elite chooses to decree. So I think for these people who strut around as if they were God, the idea of a system of acknowledging that each of us is mortal, that each of us is finite in terms of the length of our life, in terms of our abilities, in terms of our wisdom, that each of us needs help at different parts of our lives and even just to receive our daily bread. And it seems like an inherent form of just self-exaltation, of a lack of humility, that in elite circles it's something you denigrate, that anyone would have faith in such things. And I really think that that's part of what's driving this hostility. It's been a rather alarming trend in recent years, and I'm just so thankful. I thank God, and that phraseology will freak some people out, but I thank God that we have some faithful members in Congress who are appropriately representing tens of millions of Americans from the heartland who are now going to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't want to let you go without talking over these major cases decided by the Supreme Court coming up over the next 6 weeks. You did a really comprehensive article on this. I shared it with my audience so they would be prepped. They'd be primed for you. And I want you to comment on which you think are the most important without going to the case regarding the 14th Amendment, because that I want to talk to you about individually.
I will, though I'll say at the outset, as we leave that last topic, just yesterday the Supreme Court agreed to take up, I just had a column out last night, the Supreme Court has agreed to take up another religious liberty case, which could be the biggest religious liberty case in decades in this country. An extraordinary development.
And that's the town of Greece versus, that's the town of Greece versus Galloway?
That's correct.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. That can be a blockbuster. But going on to the cases that have been argued and that we're waiting decision on, a couple huge ones on race relations. The whole idea of racial preference, which we euphemistically call affirmative action, that's on the chopping block before the Supreme Court. It was argued in October. I think the court is likely to go in the direction of stripping it away. The only question will be whether they erode the idea of racial preference, whether government should give racial preferences, or if they go whole hog, this is unlikely, but whole hog the way I think they should, to declare that the Constitution is colorblind, that the government can't care anymore what your skin color is than what your eye color is. And only when we reach that colorblind place will racial equality truly be realized in our land, when government no longer asks and cares what your skin color is.
Okay, let me just practical implications, just so because we're talking to real people.
Right.
That means that your daughter applies and she's white to a university, and J.C. Watt's daughter applies to the same university, and they are on equal footing there. Is that what that means?
That's exactly right. That the government doesn't say that one skin color is preferred for another for purposes of admission, and then how much more broadly that has to go. What other types of governmental programs? In a perfect world, race would never be considered by the government in anything, and I would say that that is what the 14th Amendment of the Constitution requires, is that government get out of the business of race.
Okay, but
I think we're going to take at least a step in that direction in this case.
Okay, but that will not address, and just to be clear, that will not address preferences based on other criteria, for example, such as gender?
That's correct. That would be another issue to be dealt with on another day, obviously related, but that's right. The core purpose of the 14th Amendment after the Civil War, the core purpose of the 14th Amendment was to end all governmental actions that discriminated on the basis of race. Not just discriminated against black people, but discriminated against any group of people regardless of their skin color, which would include, of course, white people. It's just to say, get government out of the business of divvying up our citizens on the basis of skin color.
Okay, and I'm keeping you long, but I can't stand it because I just really want to get through this. And then the biggest case that you outlined this year, of course, is this Hollingsworth versus Perry. Tell us what the practical implications are to this decision on the 14th Amendment.
That's right, and that's whether or not there's a constitutional right to gay marriage that we've never noticed in 150 years of having the 14th Amendment. Now, it should be noted there's maybe, and I'm making up a number, but maybe a 20% chance that the case could be dismissed on a technicality, assuming the court reaches the merits, and I believe they will. Then I believe the court is likely to say that there is no such invisible fundamental right to gay marriage that we've never noticed before. So if that's the case, every state that wants to maintain traditional marriage of one man and one woman may do so. If the court goes the way I do not think it will, if it says there is a fundamental right to gay marriage, then all traditional marriage laws from coast to coast will be immediately eradicated from the books. Gay marriage will be a right in all 50 states. But beyond that, the way they're defining marriage is the union of consenting adults. If, in fact, the court adopts that as a fundamental right, then not only will gay marriage be a fundamental right, but so will polygamy. Marriage will not just be limited to two people. And frankly, polygamy is practiced in 50 nations across the globe. Polygamy has been around for 5,000 years, versus gay marriage is only in 14 countries out of 200, and it's only been on Earth for a little more than a decade. So actually, if you want to get into the business of redefining marriage, there's a much stronger historical argument and global argument in favor of polygamy. So we are on the verge of potentially, and again, I don't think the court will go here, but potentially completely redefining the whole concept of family in our society for all time.
Wow, that is so interesting, because you may know that my husband and I did the show ABC's Wife Swap, and that was a major component of the show. I was put with a polygamy family, and my husband pointed out that fact, and of course was made to look like a complete fool for it. But it sounds to me like he was absolutely right.
He was dead on. That is precisely right. And I'll tell you, gay marriage supporters who I've debated on national television and stuff, they are scared to death of that issue. They laugh about it. They said it's so silly, it's not going to happen. There are already federal lawsuits that have been filed in this country demanding a constitutional right to polygamy, and they all say the same thing. They say if there's a right to gay marriage, then we are also consenting adults, and there's a right to our marriage as well. For people who say, well, you can talk about victimizing women, you can talk about child abuse, you can create reasons for why you could still disallow polygamy, you come back and say, what about gay polygamous marriage? What about three men getting into a marriage? There is no woman there to be victimized. There are no children there to be victimized. So if there's a right to gay marriage, then there is at bare minimum a right to gay polygamy, because it's all same sex with no naturally occurring children, so you don't have all of these other concerns. If there's a right for two men to get married, then there's a right for three men to get married.
That will certainly be interesting. I promise you, this is my last question. I don't think I've ever kept somebody this far over a break.
No, that's fine. It's always great to be on your show.
Thank you. I wrote a post this week in an opinion piece for WorldNet Daily, and I realize we're talking about different outlets here, but we're all in the same ship.
That's fine.
And I pointed out that perhaps we really need to consider, even though many of us lean very libertarian and love the idea of states having rights, that what Roe versus Wade has done is sort of paved a way to what has happened first with Gosnell, and now we're watching it happen again with Carpin, and we know there are others hiding under the rug somewhere. So my point is, do you or do you not think it's a good idea for to revisit, I guess, Roe versus Wade on a national level, and then do you or do you not think that might happen?
Well, I absolutely believe Roe v. Wade is one of the worst decisions in American history. It absolutely needs to be overruled. However, we do not have 5 votes on the Supreme Court right now to do it. Kennedy voted to uphold it in 1992, and without Kennedy, we can't get to 5 votes to overrule it now. So the only way to overrule Roe, and Roe should be overruled, is we need to win the White House in 2016 with a true constitutional conservative who puts good justices who are faithful to the original meaning of the Constitution on the court, because the reality is there is no federal right to abortion. Just like gay marriage, it's not found anywhere in the words of the Constitution. There is no federal right to it. It is a matter of state sovereignty. It's a matter for the states to debate democratically, one-on-one, and God willing that Roe v. Wade could be overruled, then pro-life forces can retrench all of their efforts to do exactly that, to have it out in the democratic process in each of the 50 sovereign states where it belongs.
All right, Ken Klukowski, we will watch for all of your great stuff on Breitbart, and we are happy to have you on the show today. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Gina.
All right, my friend.